Hello everyone, my name is Norvia and welcome back to my channel. Jumping right in, if you've watched my reading journal videos before, you'll notice this video is a little bit different from how I usually do it. That's because in October, I was participating in the Bewitched Book Challenge by Erin Smith, and so I was really motivated to read this month and was able to read a total of 9 books. Usually I can only read 4 or 5 books, so this is almost double for me. Because of all of the decorated review spreads, and because I have to fill out an additional page for the book challenge, I had too much stuff to fit just into one video. I decided to split my reading update into 2 parts, so you'll get one now, and the next part will be up next week. In this video, I'm going to do the reviews for the first 6 books I read this month, and then in next week's video, I'll do the remaining 3, along with all my stats and yearly updates, and I'll set up November's pages as well. Starting with my key and calendar, last month I was able to start both the Radium Girls and Powerless, and then I was finally able to finish them this month. Next, I was able to read We Have Always Lived in the Castle, followed by The Teller of Small Fortunes, The Bone Houses, and The Night and the Moth. Flipping the page, I'll start working on my first decorated review spread. The first book I was able to read this month was The Radium Girls, The Dark Story of America's Shining Women by Kate Moore. For the decoration of this page, I wanted the color scheme to revolve around this really intense green because it's similar to the green glow-in-the-dark effect that Radium had on the girls. To get that effect, first I put down some washi tape in 2 different shades of green, and then I layered this marbled origami paper on top. I also used some bone and skeleton stickers because of the effects that Radium had on people's bones. I wanted to keep the page's decoration pretty simple and straightforward because of how powerful and impactful the actual story of the book was. Also, if you see any materials or supplies that you like the look of, I will have everything linked in the description down below. The Radium Girls is a nonfiction book that tells the true story of the women who worked as dial painters in the early 1900s using radium to make watches glow in the dark. At first, this seemed like a really good job because it had really good pay and steady work, and radium was something that only the rich could have, so it was a privilege for these young girls to be able to work with it. However, no one actually realized just how dangerous this paint was until several years later when many of the women began to fall mysteriously ill. When the women told the companies about their illnesses, they refused to take responsibility, and so the women had to begin to fight for their justice. As stated in the author's note at the end of the book, Kate Moore really tried to tell their stories with compassion and details to their actual lives and experiences. This was a really amazing book that took me on a roller coaster of emotions. At times I was heartbroken hearing the women's stories, and at other times I was infuriated at the companies on their behalf. It was also really inspiring to see how their courage changed labor laws and made the whole world safer. This was my first nonfiction book of the year, and I'm really glad that I picked this one. It was so good that I rated it 3.75 stars. I will never give you spoilers in the voiceover, however, the written reviews do contain spoilers, so read those at your own risk. The next book I read was Powerless by Lauren Roberts. For this page's decoration, instead of basing it on the material of the book, I decided to base it around the book cover. Most of the cover is very dark, but there are a few purple flowers on it, which was my main source of inspiration. First, I'll lay down a variety of either black or purple floral washi tapes and a purple PET tape. These are placed either towards the bottom or the right-hand side of the page. Next, along the inner left side of the page, I'll lay down this purple floral scrapbook paper. Finally, along the bottom of the page, I'll place the book cover along with a little sword sticker to match the one on the cover. For the title of this page, I really wanted to match the style and font of the one on the cover, so first I penciled it in before filling it in with my silver metallic paint pen. As for the story of Powerless, this is a young adult fantasy set in a world that is divided by power. The elites are people who are born with special abilities, such as controlling water or fire, and the powerless are the people under their control. They have no powers, and because of that, they're hunted and if they are found, banished from the kingdom. Peyton is the main character who doesn't have powers, but she's very clever and observant and has been able to get by thus far by saying that she's a psychic. When she accidentally rescues one of the princes from a fight, she is pulled into a dangerous competition meant only for the powerful called the Purging Trials. Because of this, she has to try to keep her secret hidden and survive and outsmart everyone around her. This book was really fast-paced, but overall I felt like there were a few things that were underdeveloped. I liked the slow burn romance between Peyton and Kai, and I liked the idea of the trials, but things eventually got a little repetitive, and I was a little bit confused about things not being fully explained. I think this was a good but not great book, so I rated it 3.25 stars. I did really like the ending though, and it's kept me intrigued to keep reading the rest of the series. The third book I was able to read this month was We Have Always Lived in the Castle by Shirley Jackson. I've previously watched this movie, but I haven't read the book, so I was really excited to read it and see the differences between the two. This is a really gothic and surreal and strange book, so I wanted to go with a very dark color scheme. First, I laid down some black PET tape, then I laid down some black paper over top of it so that the lace just peeked out from below. Next, I glued down the cover along with placing a bunch of stickers over top of the black paper and the lace tape. For these stickers, I wanted them to represent various elements in the book, such as a cat, teacup, and stamps representing the Gothic architecture of the house. For this title, I again wanted to mimic the title on the book cover, so I went in with my white gel pen over top of the black paper for a little bit of contrast. I did smudge it a little bit, but it's already over top of black paper, so I went in with my Tombow Fudenosuke and fixed things up a little bit. Next, I wrote down the author's name, also using the white gel pen, before sticking a few final stickers in the remaining gaps on the page. Moving on to the actual storyline of the book, this is a gothic classic that follows two sisters named Mary Cat and Constance who recently underwent a family tragedy in which most of their family members mysteriously died. This left them ostracized by the village, and now they live in isolation in their house with their uncle, who is their last remaining relative. A mysterious cousin soon comes to visit them, and the story slowly starts to fall apart, where you cannot tell what is real and what is not. As I said before, I've watched the movie, so I knew what the main twist was already before I read this book. However, Mary Cat is such an unreliable narrator that at many times I got caught up in the book and wasn't actually following the truth. This book both had a sense of unease and beauty in the writing. It felt very claustrophobic and strange and weird at times, but you couldn't look away and you got caught up no matter what. There isn't a lot of action throughout this book, but that's because the main focus is on the surrealistic atmosphere and the psychology behind the characters. This book was very much like a fever dream, but I actually kind of liked it and rated it 3.75 stars. Moving on, the next book I read this month was The Teller of Small Fortunes by Julie Leong. This book is a really cozy fantasy about a fortune teller named Tao who only tells small fortunes about people. She'll tell you if it's going to rain next week or whether or not you'll stub your toe. She's got a little bit of a troubled past with her family, and so she struggles to trust other people and make friends. However, as she goes about her journey, she is able to find a few people who are slowly able to gain her trust and become like a family to her. This book also has a deeper aspect that deals with Tao being a foreigner and people treating her unfairly because of it. This isn't a super big action-filled fantasy, but it's a quiet, emotional one that is really cozy and funny. This book was exactly what I expected about a cozy fantasy to be, and it was a really good contrast compared to all of the heavier books that I've read this month. I really liked all of the main side characters and thought it was really cute how funny and chaotic they were. However, I felt this book was very predictable since we knew everything was going to work out in the end, and personally, I like a book with a little bit more substance. Because of that, I rated this book 3.5 stars. As for this page's decoration, this book was very whimsical and fun and chaotic, so I decided to use that same approach to my decoration. I didn't really have a set plan and just pulled out all of the stickers and materials that related a little bit with the story and decided to layer them on top of each other and play with the positioning. flipping the page, I'll start working on the review for The Bone Houses by Emily Lloyd-Jones. I started off the decoration for this page by first gluing down this black and gold skeleton hand banner at the bottom of the page. Then over top of that, I layered this really intricate and pretty ram's skull sticker. In the story, there's a really loyal goat, and I know this isn't the exact same sticker, but I thought it would be similar enough to work. Next, I'll glue down a couple more material papers in the bottom left, and top right corners. This black and gold paper with a skeleton pattern really represents the cover of the book very well. I also glued down a map since one of the characters is a map maker, and finally I glued down a skeleton because there's quite a few of them throughout the story. Finally, to do the title and the author's name, I used my letter stamps in combination with my Tombow Fudenosuke. The Bone Houses is another young adult fantasy that blends spooky folklore and mythology with a really heartfelt adventure. This story is set in a small village on the edge of a cursed forest where the dead sometimes rise from their graves and are known as bone houses. The story follows a girl named Rin who is a gravedigger trying to support her two siblings after her parents' deaths. Alice is a boy who is trying to be a map maker and comes to the village searching for the truth about his past. Shortly after his arrival, the bone houses start moving beyond the forest and coming into town, which they've never done before. Rin and Alice set out on a journey into the forest to discover the curse's origin and to try and stop the bone houses. This book does have a very eerie and spooky atmosphere and has really interesting mythology, but it is also full of warmth and humor and found family. As I said, there's a really funny, loyal goat that's a companion to Rin and follows her throughout most of the story. Alice and Rin are both very dedicated and hardworking, which makes them very likable characters. As I said before, this book has some very interesting and eerie folklore, but I wish that the world building and mythology was developed a little bit more. Also, I feel like one of the main mysteries of the story was really glossed over and wasn't given enough attention. Having said that, this was still a really good book, and as such, I rated it 3.75 stars. Moving on to the very last pages I'll be doing for this video, I'm going to create a Dutch door full page spread for The Night and the Moth by Rachel Gillig. Usually when I'm going to review a book, I'll either give it 1 or 2 pages. However, I loved this book so much that I had to do something I've never done before and decided to cut part of the page to make a Dutch door to add additional space for my review. Previously, my top favorite book of this year was One Dark Window, which was also by Rachel Gillig. She has absolutely topped herself, and this is now my new favorite book of the year. For the left side of the page, the main focal point is going to be this big black and blue gothic window sticker. I've never been able to use these stickers before because they are so big and they take up so much space. However, with the extra space I'm getting from the Dutch door, and because of how well it fit the theme of this book, I decided to use them now. Along with that sticker, I've also decided to use some more of my black lace PET tape on this side of the Dutch door. Next, I'm going to glue down this dark blue origami paper on the top left corner and the bottom right corner. In the remaining corner, I'm going to place this black ink splash sticker since ink and inkwells do show up in this book a little bit. There's also quite a few gargoyles in this book, so I'm going to use these gargoyle wing stickers and I'll flip the Dutch door back and forth to ensure that they're positioned correctly. Next, I'm going to continue laying down other various stickers, such as the Celestial Moon stickers, along with some dark blue and gold floral stickers. I'll continue by placing down various moth, butterfly, and star stickers. Finally, for the title on this page, I wanted to mix a typewriter font and a big calligraphy font. The words "the" and are done in a small Sakura micron pen in the typewriter font. The words "night" and "moth" are done in a bigger calligraphy style font with a blue marker. You'll see I do make a mistake here. When I try to letter the word moth, I make it too close to the other words. Because of this, the T and the H don't have enough space. After thinking about it for a little while, I decide I'm going to be able to fix this by first laying down another piece of the blue origami paper. Over top of this, I use the same writing styles, this time using my white gel pen and my silver metallic paint marker. I make sure to do the bigger words first and then write and the around them so that there's enough space for everything. I like how this turned out even better from the first one because I like how the word moth goes from the blue to the white in a nice transition. I actually got so caught up in decorating this review that I forgot to write my star rating down on the page. But I'm sure as you can tell, you'll know that I rated this book 5 stars. The Night and the Moth is a really beautiful romantic fantasy that is dark, atmospheric, and emotionally rich. I really don't want to give too many details away since this book is written so beautifully that a lot of the details intertwine and most things I tell you could be spoilerish. However, I can tell you that the story follows a girl named Sybil who is a diviner and a knight named Rory. Their fates intertwine once they meet each other, and they live in a world that is touched by magic, betrayal, and secrets. As Sybil begins her journey, her entire world falls apart, and she has to unlearn all of the lies she's been taught her entire life. There's a slow build to both the romance in this book and the magic system, which I think is also really interesting. Rachel Gillig is amazing at writing unique magic systems that I've never heard of before and doing really amazing world building. This book is a really good mix of action and emotion and mood. I couldn't recommend this book enough since I love both of the main characters, I love all of the side characters, I love the magic system, I love unlearning all of the lies, and I just love everything about this book. Also, even though this book was gothic and haunting at times, it did a really good job of catching me by surprise, making me laugh and kick my feet several times throughout the story. Overall, I just could not recommend this book enough to anybody. I am going to read it again for myself this year, and that's not something I usually do. With the completion of this page, I'm going to end this video on a very positive note, and I'll leave the rest of the books that I read this month, along with all of my stats and yearly updates, for the second part of this video. Please leave me a comment telling me what was your favorite book that you read this month. Also, if you haven't already, please like this video and subscribe to my channel. I'll see you in my next video for the second part of my reading journal update. Thank you for watching all the way till the end.